It's actually going to be a really intense interview, so I hope you're prepared.
Like an interviewing for a job.
It's just a chat. I haven't seen you for ages.
It's just a chat in an unnatural environment with cameras and a fucking big light.
I don't think the light's too bad, to be fair.
The light's fine, I think. It's just
And the
having
cameras.
It's me. I'm the
It's
problem.
George is
I'm
so
in the room.
intimidating.
You're not intimidating at all.
And you can
mate.
drink your drink and so it's all good. Like just
Can I have a refill then, please?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've got really good soundproofing. We just put the beanbag in front of the door.
I mean, that's quite a decent gap under the door there, isn't it?
It's really bad. This
They're like,
meeting
let's
room,
just shave off 2 inches. That'll be
Yeah.
fine.
if you need to have like a serious conversation in here,
Yeah.
you either have to be willing to whisper throughout the entire conversation or just not have the conversation.
You're like, let's go for a walk. We need
Yeah,
to
let's
talk
take
about
this.
your performance.
Yeah, let's just whisper. And then the team member's like, why are we whispering? I'm like, you're about to find out.
You're really shit.
Sorry to tell you, but things aren't going very well. So we're just gonna talk about what you do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a few things around like your creativity, because the whole reason we started the podcast, really, what it's been, I've wanted to do it for ages. When we first started the business, Mum was like designing all these beautiful things and like she'd have a blank piece of paper and then all of a sudden there'd be a brand, and I was like,
How do you do that?
what have I done?
Yeah.
Like, and I had like a very mini, like my job's really boring phase, and I was like, this is, what am I doing? I'm not getting to do anything exciting, and what am I even adding?
Yeah.
And
what's
after
the value?
speaking to Mum, she was like, your words fuel my like visual ideas. So you are creative and you do have an input, but you just don't see it that way. And then we've had loads of conversations since, and I just think there's a lot of like perception around creative people, and actually we all are.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own outlet.
It feels like almost like an exclusive club. If you're not creative, you can't be a creative person.
and people have got perceptions of what like creative people look like in their head, and you know, that
thick glasses.
I mean, I genuinely don't class myself as creative, but people would. I'm a marketer.
Yeah, 100% you're creative, right?
Yeah.
Because you need to be creative with words, creative with messaging, creative with, getting a point across.
Yeah. Words are my, like how I put something across is how I'm creative.
Which
and
is
musically maybe a little bit.
Which is like 90% of design, really. When you think about it. If you take an interface out of it and you just look at a website or a landing page,
Yeah.
most of it is words. It's copy.
Yeah, like
it's
the copy on
convincing
your
stuff.
site is so good.
Well, I can't
Did you
take-
write it?
No, I can't
It's
take any credit
it's so
for that.
nice. We're not big, but we are clever. All
There's-
that little, like, it's just so, it's copy that you read and you go, oh, I wish I'd written that.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's
That's
good.
Really,
It's really
I really
good copy.
appreciate that, but no, I can't take any.
Because I've watched you. We'll get into it in a minute, but I've watched you from not a distance, but when we were at co-working and stuff and at Engine, I would watch you working or see like I wouldn't like sit in the corner like staring at
corner
you with
of
my
my eye.
binoculars
It's
or
like
anything,
a
just like, I'm
weirdo.
watching you, Aaron. But what was on your screen always looked. I've always said this to you, like your screen, whatever you're working on, always looks really fucking cool. And I'd be sat there writing like a press release for like, I don't know, a car company or something. I'd be like, oh. So it's just all about. I just wanted to have these conversations because what we think is happening in someone else's world, whilst it might have looked really good, you might have been really struggling with what you were working on.
Yeah.
To me, I have no idea the process you're going through. So yeah, we're gonna just like dabble a bit and talk about a few bits. There's no real. George will tell you there's no real like rhyme or reason. I'm not a pro podcaster or anything. So we're just, and then at the end there's like a couple of quick fire questions just for a bit of fun. But yeah.
Cool.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very
Aaron.
much.
So guys, this is Aaron from Intrface. So me and Aaron know each other through the co-working scene, I would say. So Engine, I won't go too much into the different places, but Engine was a place that we met. You were one of the originals at Engine.
I think it was some of the original like 2 or 3 starters at that place. Yeah.
So was it you, Stuart, D-Lang?
Me, Stuart, David, and Matt, I believe.
Yeah.
Were the sort of not the founding forefathers, but part of the sort of foundation in the beginning, early stages. Yeah.
So that was at a point where I hadn't started the business yet. It was an idea. I was really miserable in my job, and then we all moved together to the granary, which is where we are now.
Yeah.
And you started Intrface. Had you started Intrface at Engine when I first met you, or were you?
It was like in its early conception. I was playing around with ideas, and I settled on Intrface because it was like the last in a long list of like domain names that I could actually get and copyright that I could get, like when registering for the IP. It wasn't my like preferred choice, so that was where it's conceived, and it just sort of evolved.
What was can you remember what your preference was? What did you want it to be called?
I think it was something wanky like paradigm shift. Or
Intrface is way better.
Well,
Intrface
like Paradigm works.
Yeah, Paradigm's good.
You know, there's like 100 agencies in
the
the world called Paradigm. So it was trying to choose something that was unique that I could get the domain name for.
Yeah.
And phonetically, I had to knock off the E of Intrface. So yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. It is real. And we'll go into what you guys do in a minute. But now that we'll get onto this as well. Now that I fully know what you do, because I always used to look at your screen in slight mystery, looking at how amazing everything looked, but just the terminology that comes with your job nowadays used to confuse me a little bit. But what, just for anyone who hasn't heard of it, what do you guys do in a nutshell?
So I always explain it. We're an agency and a consultancy, so we kind of sit between those things. So we're the thinkers and the doers, but we're also advising a lot of our clients like startups and SaaS companies. But we're a digital product consultancy. So we design mobile apps, web apps, anything that is a product that has an end user, basically. We design those products and we also build them as well.
Yeah, and it all looks really cool.
I appreciate that.
Everything. Like, I'm not just saying this because you sat here, but like when I used to look at your screen, and like your setup's always, you're very, what I would call, you're a very classic design. Yeah, you're very like, your minimal, desk is always immaculate. It's minimal, it's tidy. Everything has its place, its purpose. Like there's nothing there that doesn't need to be there necessarily. And it just, everything is thought through. Like I feel like there's nothing in front of you that doesn't have an intention or doesn't need to be there. I think
my wife will probably disagree with you though, in terms of like my laziness and leaving things lying around. So I think that's why I curate my desk, because it's almost like a piece of design that I can control. Yeah. You know, it's not a hoodie that's lying over the back of a chair.
Doesn't really like create the creativity that you need, does it? Whereas if you're going to sit and be creative every day, you do need your workspace to be, if it was cluttered, and I won't mention any names, but there's a few people in this office that I'm like, how? And he knows who I'm talking about. Stuart, we love you.
Clean that desk, mate.
But yeah, I'm the same. In similar to you, it doesn't always look quite as like aesthetic as yours, but I need my desk to be clean so that my head's clean. And some people don't get that. But if you've got to sit and design something and come up with concepts for things, it's hard to do that in a messy environment.
And I want to be able to focus on the screen and focus on like the problem or whatever I'm solving at hand, whatever's on that screen, and not be looking at a desk that has so many distractions on. Yeah. I'm distracted enough as it is. That's why my phone's upside down. Yeah. And I mute everything just so I can just focus on that one thing, because I feel like my brain can go off on tangents like quite quickly. Yeah. So I think nice, clean, uncluttered desk just works
peaceful
wonders. Yeah.
You use the Pomodoro technique, don't you, sometimes?
When I don't use it religiously, but I know if we've got deadlines in the studio that we need to aim for, then I'll time box. So I will, usually 45 minutes is what I found with me is my most productive time. Yeah. And then I'm really bad for just moving myself away from the desk, like, breathing, going for a walk and stuff. I think a lot of us are. Yeah. But that just forces me to stop what I'm doing and just get up. Even if it's just like I'm looking off into the distance.
Yeah. Or go to Yellow Bob and get a coffee.
Yeah.
Just move.
That natural break. And because creativity, I think, is a lot about problem solving.
Yeah.
it helps just to remove yourself away from that. And I think, actually, I could address this one problem in a different way if I approached it, fresh. And
It's interesting you say it like that creativity is about problem solving, because one of the reasons this podcast started was because I think people have quite random perceptions of what creativity is. So some people see creativity as like, oh, well, you're just flouncing around with a brush in your hand, or you're a musician, or they go to those very like traditional forms of being creative. But I agree with you. I think anyone who's in a role or a position where you're trying to fix things or improve things or solve problems, you have like my accountant, the way she talks about numbers and things, and I'm just like, what? Like she is creative. She can think creatively with numbers. She can do things that I can't. It's just a different form.
Yeah. I think it's the same. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if there's any psychologists there that can quote me here, but I think generally we all have like a base level of creativity that we use on like a daily basis. It's not like a patchwork, blanket or something that's being creative or crafty, or pen and paper. These things that are creative, but I always see it as problem solving. And I think there's a scale as well. Like, I think most people, if they pick up a pen, they can be quite creative and draw something. And even if they say they're inherently bad at drawing, they can create something, right?
Terrible.
A lot of people think that, they can't draw. But it's surprising when you say, okay, we'll pick up a pen and draw something or give them a theme. And I think that's creativity manifesting. I just like where you sit on that scale of creativity. Can you creatively solve a large problem? Or can you, use your creativity to create something new?
That's new. And that's where I struggled, because I think for me, I didn't feel like my creativity comes out in words 100%. But I, at the time when we started this business, didn't see it that way. I was just like, well, I just write things down. I didn't really see the storytelling in it as much as I should. I didn't see the fact that, as my mum said to me, it fueled what my mum was doing, which was what I thought was the creative stuff, because it all just looked great. And I was like, well, mine's just words on a page. But actually, you need the words. And like we were just talking about your website, and, words are essential to how you sell a brand, to how you sell an app, to how you sell a website. Like on a website, if your words are crap, you're screwed. So it took me a while to realise that that's my thing. Just because I can't design, it's fine. Like, get over it, Hannah. Like, it was just that like inner designer in me, I think, probably.
Yeah, because you
like
can't
screaming.
move things around a screen. I think, arguably, copywriting and writing, messaging or a story, whatever it is, I think it's more difficult. Personally, and I think that's because I don't feel like I'm naturally a writer. I've kind of like had to learn to be able to write, but I don't think that's like a natural skill of mine. And I always see it as like someone who is a wordsmith or a silver tongue who has a way of words, who can get a point across really quickly in like, concise few sentences. I think it's like there's an art in that, which I get. I'm not very good at, and I'm trying to go there. But I think that is like creativity. It's like, it's height.
It's when people can write things that go into, like, say, I used an example here the other day. There's an ad on a bus stop up the road, and it's for I think it's Leerdammer or one of those European cheeses, and the copy says mild and nutty, slap it in your butty. And like I've remembered it.
That would probably only work in the UK.
Yeah. But I've driven past it and I've remembered it. And then there's another one on the other side that's not quite as like catchy, but that's copy that I've probably told about 10 people about that advert. And that's
because you
where
remembered it.
Yeah,
it
because it's succinct, like you say. It's like it's got the message across in like 8 words, or more. Like it's just brilliant. But yeah, my sort of creative crisis is what sort of started this, basically. So welcome to the result of my creative crisis. But I wanted to ask you, like, before we go into like what you're doing now and Intrface and your previous jobs, what's your earliest memory of being creative or starting to think, I quite like designing things? Or
my earliest memory of being creative is probably deciding not to play football with all the other kids in the playground and staying inside in middle school to draw like lions and tigers.
Oh, really?
And I think that's when I knew, okay, you know, I didn't know naturally that was kind of like what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But there was something like in me that was like, I think you just need to express yourself.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily that I was like into tigers or lions. I was just like, I want to see if I can reproduce something.
Yeah.
And I kind of like made a club out of it. Like I would invite my mates instead of going out and playing like football. I'd invite them and we can just sit and scribble and stuff.
Like a little drawing club.
Yeah, like a little drawing club. It didn't last very long because just I'm really bad at like anything to do with planning.
Yeah.
So it just, you know, it just fell apart. But I think that was like my early like memory of being creative and going, okay, well, what can I do with this? And I think that just spilled into like other aspects of my life, like technology, taking apart a computer and then putting it back together and understanding how components, how they work together, and what slots where and like how you screw things in. And I think to me that was a real creative thing. Because it's problem solving, taking something apart, putting it back together, and I loved it. So that's kind of like my early contacts. I think that I can remember.
That makes a lot of sense thinking about what you do now as well, because you are now still doing both. Like you could say,
the same thing.
The design, some of the design element is that you're still drawing what things look like, you're still creating how things look and feel, but you are also building a product. So it's that combination of like graphics and product design, and it's so you've stayed true to your course, to be fair. Yeah,
I think I do feel like I'm quite lucky because I'm really spiky in one area and I've known that. And I've always kind of known what I've wanted to do. Like I wanted to pursue design from like very early on. Like it was super clear and nothing else was going to sway me. And that path was set.
That's nice.
It's
to have that security in knowing what you want to do must have been a nice feeling.
Because I've had lots of friends who, you know, even still when they're approaching 40, they still don't know quite what they want to do as a career or with the rest of their life or where their focus area is. And I've always had that. So I'm like, I feel really, really privileged. But it's come, you know, at a price, because being so spiky in one area, you actually just realize there's so many other areas that you don't understand, like marketing, like sales, you know, all these things that stitch together when you build an agency. You're like, holy shit, I don't know what I'm doing here. And it's so easy to stay in that comfort zone and just focus on that one thing that you know you're really good at. But actually there's parts of the business that you actually now need to do.
Oh yeah, I feel you.
So it's more important.
And there's not like there's lots of books and stuff, but there isn't just like a how to build a business manual, because everyone's got different, everyone's building something slightly different, and we all come with same as what you just said. I'm a good marketer, but I'm not a ready-made businesswoman. So there's lots of things I'm like, what the? And you're learning the whole way through. But yeah, it must have been a really nice feeling to know that that's what you wanted to do. Were your parents or family, was there any creativity around you, or were you like a bit the odd one out? Like what were you surrounded by at that point, would you say?
I think the whole family is quite creative, whether they would admit it or not. I'm not sure, but like my mum and dad, they were very creative. Like I just remember once my dad had painted this beautiful picture of a like landscape and scene of like, he was very into like microlighting at that time, small planes, and he painted this beautiful painting of a microlight, you know, flying through the air with like a sunset in the background. And I was like thinking to myself, God, Dad, you're super creative. He didn't always show it because he was like a military man, but I was so taken back by that, because I think that was the first time I'd seen something so creative from him. It was like looking at, you know, a piece of artwork. It's like, amazing. But I think more than anything, I think where I get my creativity from is probably my mum, because I've grown up with her always creating something. Like, you know, she used to make miniature bears and she used to dress up porcelain dolls. Like she was always doing something crafty. She was always creating something. You know, and I just saw that from a young age. So it was just like, you know, I was just kind of absorbing it, I guess. Like where can maybe I'm not so academic, maybe I'm more I don't know, creative and right brain. So how can I apply this to something else, you know? And, you know, my sister, not so much in terms of the creativity, but I know she's got it. So I think it's just,
it's in you guys. Yeah.
For sure.
Same for me with mum. Like mum is a graphic designer by trade, and I grew up, I just remember the Macs, like the different Macs in the house. Yeah. So she had like the big, the clear one where you could see all of like the insides of the computer.
Yeah.
And she always just had like cool stuff. And then we got the Mac Mini.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a computer.
How do you stick a whole computer in that
and
tiny
she was
little
like,
box?
yeah, it's a computer. And like, she'd always got like the, you know, the rubber boards with the pen, what are they called? The like scalpels that you'd cut things out. Because mum came from like old school print, like she was telling us about it the other day. So
that's
I
like
was
a
the same as you.
Art, that.
Sounds
because that's
brutal.
how I started when I started design. It was like mount board, foam board, and a scalpel.
Yeah.
Right. And you were mounting up ideas and concepts.
Imagine doing that now.
Yeah, just people were like, what are you doing?
It wouldn't happen, would it?
Were you using this mount board, piece of foam to mock up some logo ideas?
Just put it in AI and it will spit it out for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've gone to a whole other world now. So from that sort of like initial phase of like the drawing and like being creative in that way, you went to college and did like graphics, didn't you? And then you went to uni and did graphics and communication. I've stalked
graphic
you, Aaron.
communication.
Yeah. And then you've had a really like the list of places that you've worked and like your career so far is like pretty. I would always use the word like prolific in music, but you've worked in some really, really great agencies. So just give again like a bit of a whistle stop tour from like that young kid drawing to where you are now. Like how would you summarize the professional life of you so far? It's predominantly been in agency, hasn't it?
Yeah, mostly agency life. God, what a question. How do I summarize that? I think because I am so spiky in one area of design and being creative. Like I say, that path was kind of set for me. And I think naturally you do all the things that your parents probably want you to do. Yeah. So you know, go to college. I didn't do my A-levels. I went straight to college. Then I went to university. I think even before I went to uni, I was at college for about 4 years prior to that, learning the basics of design and art, basically. So I did. In fact, I went to college. I did IT. Then I did art and design. Then I did graphic design, and that was even before I'd gone to the BA in graphic communication.
Yeah.
But I just felt like they were like the most natural choices for me.
Yeah.
Because it's just almost like they were written into the fabric of my being.
Yeah.
It's my DNA.
You meant to do it.
You're going to go here because this course is offered and it's appropriate for you.
Yeah.
Right. And you know.
And did you find it easy? Like, did you find? Because, you know, some people are like good at things, but then they get to the point where they study and then they're like, oh, this is actually hard. And it can take the love out of it.
Yeah. I think I got to that point where when we were expected to write essays and dissertations, and I'm like, this is not me. No. Like, I don't want to be sitting there and writing an essay on the Industrial Revolution.
No.
Like, I understand how important that was.
Yeah.
And it's linked to, progression and the Industrial Revolution and design in general and retail. And like, I understand that, but do I want to write a, 10,000 word essay on it? No. And I think that's kind of, there are two things there that sort of stopped me sort of from pursuing the rest of my bachelor's degree was that I'm like, I don't want to be writing this.
Yeah.
I don't want to be doing this. I'm not academic. There was no such thing as ChatGPT or Grammarly. They couldn't really help me with my grammar and spelling, which I was awful at the time.
Grammarly is one of the best apps ever.
It's amazing. Yeah. Shout out to Grammarly.
Yeah. I live by Grammarly and I'm a copywriter.
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how I was writing anything before. It must have been horrendous. In fact, I should go back through my LinkedIn to see my early writing, and I imagine it's probably not good.
Yeah, we've all got our strengths. I mean, everything you do looks beautiful. I can't spell, but I write. I think it's But
that's the whole purpose of like Grammarly, right? You don't have to be good at punctuation and spelling because it's there for you. I think if the idea, the intent's there, then
let the tech fix it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it's there for.
The other thing was I was very lucky from like a young age. So even before I got to uni, I was offered a job in a small design agency in
cool.
Northampton, and it kind of just got to the point where I was like, I was almost doing full-time hours and then doing a uni course like alongside each other. So then I was like, okay, well, I've got my foot in the door here.
Yeah.
How much do I value that qualification on a piece of paper? So I just had a word with my director at the time. I was like, do you want to take me on? And he was like, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So
Snap
like,
your arm off.
Yeah. So I joined him, and I was there for, I think, 3 years, and I learned. I'll always be super grateful to him, because he gave me that sort of basis, I think, for my career, and also gave me like the room and the space to experiment with things and to be really creative, like push the boundaries, not just technology, just design, everything. He just gave me that space.
You need that, don't you? Because if you're not as a creative person, whether it's design, copy, music, AV, videography, media, whatever it might be, if you're not given the free rein to test things, you get quite like stuck in a lane. And you see it happen to some creatives because they don't have that like width. They're not given it. They just end up producing the same kind of stuff all the time. And you have to produce some crap to actually like really enjoy the good stuff, don't you?
I produce a lot of crap.
I actually can't imagine you designing anything that doesn't look good. I even saw on your LinkedIn, this is how far back I've gone. I went through where you shared one of your old like design reels, and it was done on some sort of old tech that was probably, I don't know. It was like a show reel of design basically, but it was really old school.
It was a camera on a tripod pointed at an IMAX screen, and that's how I recorded that like. And it was
you could see because like the screen was like curved, but it was so cool to see. Actually, for you, it must have been obviously cool personally, but for people to see how far you've come, the kind of things that you're designing now. Some of the apps that you've designed have been hugely successful, but also, that yes, they look brilliant, but they work really well as well, which is the whole point, right? But before we get into, again, like the sort of dark depths of what you do now, agency life, as you sort of evolved through agency, you've obviously come to the point where you've ended up starting your own agency, and prior to the agency, you were working for yourself, weren't you? Sort of like freelancing to people. But what were the sort of highlights for you through agency life? Because obviously there are lowlights as well, but we keep it positive here.
The highlights. I think servicing your own clients. I think once you start working directly with clients and knowing that you've got control over the outcomes, and that this is a piece of work that the agency's creating, that you can put your personal, brand and name behind. You're not doing it for another agency. That's going to benefit from the work. You're helping them, and you don't have to take like creative direction from anyone else. Like you can just have that and mold it and help the client, realize what they're trying to create. I think that's like one of the massive highlights. Obviously there's pitfalls and things that I've fallen into, things I've had to learn over the years that haven't been so great. I mean, it's been an interesting time, past couple of years.
Oh yeah, don't even. We started our businesses quite similar times, really. Not that we were around the same time. It was all during like the COVID stuff, wasn't it? And I say the COVID stuff, I've really downplayed that, but that global pandemic that we all went through. I mean, we started literally 25th of March, 2020. So
that would have been like the back end of like the
right, but it was just as Boris announced lockdown 1.
Oh right,
it was round about that time. I think he'd either.
2019.
It was like a week before or so. Yeah, it was
right,
because I remember the whole engine lot. We were all like doing the vlog stuff, and I got all my paperwork, and I was like, "Yay, business owner!" Like we're supposed to be
just
really,
incorporated, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, no one's spending any money. No. You have 0 clients to start with.
No,
like,
we had
good luck
one.
getting some.
We had one, and then they had to furlough everyone immediately. So our one lifeline went. So we built this from nothing, like in the height of like, but you just somehow do it, don't you? Like,
and I've seen like there's a story here. Like I've seen your brand evolve, and I've seen, you know, you grow as well. Not just from like online, you know, from speaking to you. And it's like you've built something incredible here.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Against it all. Not, you know, to be fair, you know, COVID.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
it's also going for a horrendous breakup as well. That was rubbish. I was a bit all over the shop, wasn't I, really?
Doom and gloom of the, you know, recession as well, and being a female agency owner.
Yeah.
You know, and you've managed to grow a very successful agency. So
we're getting there, yeah. We're getting there. But like you, it comes with there's again that perception of lots of people say to me, I can see it's going really well. And I'm like, yeah, no, it is going really well. But the growth comes with pain. Like growth comes with massive pain, and it's that balance between grow, stabilize, grow, grow. And you have to, I go through a real, like, when I'm really looking after myself, I feel like the business isn't doing as well.
Right.
And when I'm not looking after myself, the business is flying. So there's lots of like little battles that we have to face, isn't there? But and you now know this as well, having been, I never worked in an agency before I started one.
Right.
So I didn't have any
you're
like
client side, you're internal.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had no like previous experiences of being in an agency, because what I was going to say to you
probably
is
a really good thing though, because
maybe
I think once you're in an agency, you kind of see the, you know, the processes and pitfalls. And I think that like you could, like that would be very helpful, but I think in some respects it might not be so great to be able to see that, because you can put your own stamp on things. You're not colored by, you know, the previous workplaces and how they used to work, and like feeling like this should be your process. You're like, actually, I'm just going to figure this thing out myself. Oh,
I mean, there's definitely some scar tissue in there from like previous jobs of like how I'm not going to run the business.
Right.
But agency wise, definitely not. Because from your experience of being, you know, you've worked in multiple really successful, very well sought after, like good, strong branded agencies. So what did you take from some of those, you know, without naming names? Are there things that you've taken where you're like, I definitely don't want to be running my agency that way, and I definitely do want to take that? Like, have you cherry picked the good and the bad? Yeah,
there's I'm just going to choose my words, and obviously not naming any agencies. I think just going back to pitfalls, like I've seen them, and I've seen culture like suffer as a result. And I think that's the really unfortunate thing about running the business is, and I think if you're at director level, you're trying to run a business and you're responsible for sales and marketing, sometimes you don't see what's happening like elsewhere in the business. So it's super, super difficult. But I promised myself that I'll build an agency that we're super proud of the work that we're producing, and that everyone is, you know, there's a transparency there, that everyone has a say, and that nothing's a silly question. And I said to Yana, I was like, if you feel strongly about something, then I want you to feel free to challenge me. Yeah. Because that's what it has to be about. Like, I'm not going to tell you to do something. I might give you some options. I'm saying, okay, explore X, Y, and Z, and then leave them to explore, and then like come to the conclusion themselves and pick a direction, giving them the power to choose, actually, this works best. Yeah. And then once they go through that, they will know why this works best. Yeah. So I think it's just giving people autonomy, giving them the responsibility, stop breathing down their necks. And if they want to work from home, let them work from home if that's the arrangement that you've got. And you don't need to be monitoring Slack whether they're online or not. But that's my business. That's the way that I want to run my agency. There's many companies that don't, and I can see the pros and cons for both. But I just want to allow the flexibility, because I think that's when people do their best work. Yeah. Like I know certainly as an employee of agencies, like I appreciate that, the autonomy and the power to sort of make decisions, and that, that really did well for me. Yeah. And if you're I say true creative, I don't really like that phrase, but if you are a very creative person and you are micromanaged, it's like the worst
anything you can do for creativity. And people have joined our team and we're very much the same. Like, it's one of the things we do in like the first few stages of them being here, like the first few days is like, FYI, if there's anything you see that you think we could do better, you tell me.
Yeah.
Like, there's no...
Yeah.
Just
because
because you're not
improve,
running the
right?
place. Yeah. It's like I want, different perspectives. And Georgia, one of our designers, when she first started, she was like, oh, is this how we file things? And I was like, yeah. And we are actually, there's numbers, there's structure, but Georgia was like, I think we can simplify it.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, tell me how, let's talk it through and we'll implement it. Like, you have to be like that, because otherwise if you stifle people, you then it creeps into what they're actually here to do. And I just think that's dangerous, and it will damage your business in the long run.
Yeah.
So it's just a shame not everybody thinks like that. But I think there's more of us that do now, more people that are starting up that I talk to. I think it depends what experiences you've had and what kind of chips you've got. And those chips hopefully go in. Oh yeah, many chips. But with Intrface then, so the phrase, and I mentioned it earlier, like some of the terminology around what you do as a professional used to confuse me, because there's a lot of phrases in there like when I first met you, I would have said you were a if someone had said, what does Aaron do based on what was on your screen, I'd have said he's a graphic designer.
Yeah.
And you are a designer, but the terminology that's used around what you guys do is it's all around UI and UX.
Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know what those two little phrases mean, UI and UX, what do they mean?
It's a great question, and one that's often argued many times. I think firstly that label is responsible for a lot of confusion, because people use them interchangeably, and people don't quite understand like what each of the terms actually mean. But I think the best way to try to understand is anything that anyone that has an interaction with a product is user experience, right?
Yeah.
It is the experience that people have when they're interacting with something like a mobile app or a SaaS product or even a website.
Yeah.
A final, a live interactive thing. UX is just an umbrella term, and everything that sits underneath there are the disciplines. So it could be, let's just call it research. Yeah. But in UX terms, it's user research, or it's interface design, or there's another term, interaction design. These terms are responsible for the whole sort of ambiguity of the whole field in the industry. And they are confusing. The way that I see it is that anything that is UI relates to an interface, and anything that is UX relates usually to some level of insight, data, or research. Okay. Right? So we're talking could be analytics, Google Analytics, the way people are moving from one page to another, where they're clicking what they're seeing on the page and what they perceive. So that could be research, or it could be things like surveys, for instance, like sending out surveys, or doing user testing, which means you're presenting what you've designed, an interactive product in front of someone. There's lots of different methods to test, but that's one of the things. But there's like a whole ton of terms there that just create a whole ton of confusion.
The way I see it, I mean, for today, I've really had a good look through your guys' website, and the way I've understood what you do for a while now, but when you actually properly read through the website, for me, you guys essentially work with businesses to help them build and design web experiences that are going to convert for them, apps that are going to convert for them. It's designing things that customers are going to interact with that are going to convert. Is that going to get you the subscription? Is that going to get you? Because you talk about things like, I saw one of your posters around how someone, I can't remember who it was, but it was an app that did the really good, when you have the free trial. Yeah. And then they upgrade you. They're like, oh, your trial ends in 4 days. Right. It's 2 clicks to upgrade. And they make it really seamless and simple. So what you do for me is a blend of making things look really appealing and look quality, but also work really well.
Yeah.
So that there's like as little friction as possible for the end user.
Yeah. And there's always a balance here between someone interacting with a product and then the goals of the business. Because that's really kind of like what user experience is, those two things. How can you, I don't know, ship a feature that's intuitive and people can understand and people can use, but also how can you weigh that up with the goals and the objectives of the business? Like, you know, they want to be able to sign up another 5,000 users a month to their mobile app, or whether it's subscription based or whether it's an in-app purchase. Okay, well, how do you do that? And normally it's through like little subtle changes in the design, the language that you use, the calls to actions that you use, being open and transparent, like the example that you mentioned there, being upfront and transparent about charges and when like free trials and when subscriptions are due to kick in, so people have
it was
like,
Blinkist.
the control. It's Blinkist, right? And they do a really good job of this. And I think that's user experience, trying to balance that between user goals, like what they want to achieve, what they want to use this feature, but also the goals of the business, what they want out of this. And I think that's what, you know, you could use psychology as an example. That's a lot of it.
Massive part of it.
There's principles and stuff in design that we apply sometimes without even knowing it. There's lots of great design patterns as well. Libraries and research as well, like things that you can look at and implement into your own like design. But
you need all that. Like I bang on about it so much from a marketing perspective. Like if you don't know who you're trying to get this product, this website, this subscription, this fundraising link in front of, if you don't know that person really well, you're not going to be able to create the campaign or the product or the end solution that they're going to buy into. So you guys must spend a lot of time working with the clients. And I can imagine at the stage, and I might be really wrong here, but I can imagine at the stage that people would typically interact with you, they've got that person really clear in their head. Or do you find that actually you have to do a lot of the work with them?
I think a lot of the times what like product teams and founders think is the ideal customer or ideal user often isn't.
Interesting.
If they have a product that maybe is in the marketplace, so they're post revenue, so they're making money from it, they'll make some assumptions based on who they think that those users are. So that might be informed by the marketing. That just might be informed by I don't know, bias towards what they think the certain user types are. That isn't always the case, and I think that's why we've got to open up the bonnet to find out. Okay, look, what's the challenge here? What's the problem? When we need to increase signups, because I don't know, we've spent a whole ton of money on PPC and we acquired all these users, but we can't convert them to paying customers. So then we have to understand who those people are, why they're using this product in the first place, without
what
understanding
their drivers.
that. Yeah, exactly. What their needs are, what their wants are, what motivations they have to use your product. What value does it bring? And I think that's the consultancy part of it. That's the research part. There's various methods to do that. But it's not like a cookie cutter approach. You can't just go with this product, we're going to be doing this type of testing and this is the outcome that we're going to get. Like we're going to find out the demographics of our users and find out all of the insights. Because it's just one product to another, they all vary wildly. But I think that's a misconception that these are the types of people who are using our product. And normally it's like, okay, let's have a reality check. What proof do you have that these are the people who are using your product? And often there's like a mismatch. So it's just like, okay, let's do some research to find this out. And we can do things like user interviews, so we can get people on a one-on-one call over Zoom. We can ask them thought-provoking questions, and then we can do things like user personas, a card of information that based on the interview questions, and we can pull that insight together. So that's typically what we do, not for every project because every project is different. But that's where we kind of like to start. We want to know that we're designing the right thing for the right people.
Yeah, it's so powerful when you've got that. Like it's the same for us when we do a strategy. When you deal with a client who really knows their audience really well, and there is evidence, and you can see it in front of you, you're like, oh, okay, this just makes everything so much. It's so much easier because you can go, okay, well, we've got the facts in front of us. Now we have to just match the solution to those people, fix their problems, talk in a way that they would resonate with it, and but without it, you can be very quickly stabbing in the dark. And you share like loads of stuff like you do like the memes, don't you, of like this is what people have in their mind, this is the reality, this is what this is what the designer's going through, this is what the developer's going through. And how have you, because we have this conversation a lot in the office recently, as a designer you will have had loads of experiences of like producing something that is so on brief and so ready to go, but then changes are made and suggestions are made, and gradually you see this beautiful thing that you've created just getting like ruined before your very eyes, or you'll have produced something that's then gone and has been put into the hands of somebody else and it's completely out of your control. What happens with it then? Like, how have you dealt with those, what we would say are very painful experiences? Because a lot of work goes into these things, right? And it might be slightly different with apps. It definitely happens with websites. How do you deal with that?
I think the best approach is from an informed position. So you sort of limit the chance of that happening of failure. Like with who we work with, like SaaS companies and startups, some SMEs too. The risk that there's quite a high risk of getting it wrong. So I think what we try to do is chunk things up into experiments so we know we're headed in the right direction, as opposed to completely missing the mark, because you don't want, for some of our clients, they don't want to be spending 20, 40, 60 grand building a mobile app if the audience isn't there.
Yeah.
Naturally, people like to put their stamp on things, right? And I know, that happens. We're quite accepting of that.
Yeah.
There are a few things that you can do sort of to help, almost like misdirection. And I think what really helps is being quite clear with clients what the expectation is in terms of their feedback.
Yeah.
That really helps, because that gives them a focus.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we don't necessarily want like feedback on the visual design style, for instance, because that might be something we've researched.
Yeah.
That might be something that we, from our experience, we know that works really well.
Yeah.
And actually we can see it slotting in quite nicely amongst the competition and doing better.
Yeah.
So I think it's been very like specific about the feedback that you require, because I think without those guardrails, you're leaving it open for someone to not criticize, but you're leaving it open for a client to just run away with their thoughts, and before you know it, you've got a whole ton of different thoughts, and sometimes you have to cherry pick the ones that are going to have the most impact, and then educate your client on why you won't be doing certain channel, tasks and certain feedback. It's a difficult one. We still have that challenge, because everyone has an opinion. But I think we just try to approach it, give clients enough up front. This is the rationale. This is the reasoning behind it. I find it less, like we have that less now. There might be some changes, like someone we know mutually, we're working on a project, I'm sure he won't mind me talking about this. Jan has come up with like a range of different like color options for a product that we're designing, and at the end of it he was like, oh no, just go back to the original, because I think that works. But sometimes you just got to try these things, not to prove that the original direction was right, but just, I think clients, because sometimes they're maybe not creative and they can't see how to like convey their ideas and stuff. So sometimes you just got to do it and go, we're not sure, but what do you think?
Yeah. To have looked at the options, really.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to steal that you said around like being particular with what you're willing to have feedback on, because actually when somebody is, I'm talking from, brand. Like we do a lot on brand for people, so it's slightly different for you guys because often we'll design a brand, but we don't always then work with the client on going to manage the brand. And then what happens is people know we've done the branding, but then someone unqualified is creating the social media graphics and that and just ruining the brand. And then we have to go, that wasn't us. Like we did that bit, but we didn't do that bit. So but that advice you just said there around being really particular, I'm going to steal that. We might take that and try it because we're probably not doing that at the moment. So it's something we could definitely do better.
I think that's always going to happen, right? I mean, in an ideal world, a client sticks around for the whole duration of the project and beyond, right? And you're there to support them. I understand branding, and I also know that consistency is super super important. And people who specialize in branding go through like a long process of defining all of those things. Not just typography and messaging, components and. Once that's set, and there's nothing, it's so disheartening when you see that piece of work that is unfortunately handed to someone else, and they completely fucking ruin it. That is nothing worse than that. But I think sometimes there's things that we can possibly do if we know that a client is going to handle it internally or they're going to outsource it to freelancers or whatever it is. Yeah. I think maybe just give them the information that they need to pass on, give them all the material that they need. And look, if it means that I have to jump on a call with another designer to talk them through as part of a handover what we've done, then like I'm going to do that. To ensure that the consistency is there, but it happens and it's, I mean, there's been so many design, over the years that have just been skewed and you end up with something completely different. Like you've got this Franken product and you can't put your name to it because we didn't produce that. And the same can be said, unfortunately, for when you design something, and if we're not building it internally, we prefer to do that, but you hand it off to developers, and unfortunately there might be parts of the vision or a part of the handoff, maybe it's something that you perhaps that you should have conveyed to them. But you end up with the build and you're like, this does not represent the high caliber and the high quality that we know we pride ourselves on. And you look at it and you're like, people are going to see this. And they know that we've designed it. And I'm like, it looks shit.
It's a real tough one to get over. And you guys are very much the kind of agency that you are. You can do the build and you do understand the build. So like, it makes it like twice as painful when you have to go, okay, we've designed it, but please build it beautifully. Like, please build it how it's been designed, because like you say, the process you go through isn't just like, that'll look nice. It's so much more than that. And I think there's a lot of misconception around what you do, because people will see how slick the apps look and how like you only have to go on your website is so good. And I remember when you launched it and we were all at Engine like, oh my god, it's so good. Like it was just so slick, and like the little movements in it and everything on your website understandably has been thought about. There's nothing there that's there by accident. There's nothing that moves a certain way by accident. And if someone else had built your website, it wouldn't have come out like that, because it's not just how it looks, it's how it feels, sounds, moves. And I think people don't realise that.
They don't. And I think that's why it took us so long to build that website. It almost took us, I think, whilst trying to build an agency and work on client projects and also design and build our own website, I think it took us about 4 or 5 months. Because this is everything that we do, and we've got to come across in the right way. This has to be like an incredible experience. Like when people visit our website, like we wanted them to go, wow, okay, we want to work.
It has to sell the source. It's got to sell it.
That's what
we
does.
Do. Yeah, it really does. Like you have done a great job. Like,
I mean, and it's not, the thing is, it's not perfect. Like there's so many other agencies that do incredible things, and you're like,
comparisonitis.
Why can't we do that? Or and I think it's just we did our best with what we had at the time, and when we have more time and resource, you know, I think this is always the thing as well, looking back at your past designs and things that you've created. I think you need to, there's always a part of you that is almost not embarrassed, but you're like, okay, something 5 years ago that I designed, you know, I'm a different person now. I'm a different designer. I might approach that differently.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're embarrassed by things, but I think that's like a really healthy thing. Not just design, but anyone who is, you know,
Oh God, yeah.
creative, or anyone who is in this kind of field or industry.
Yeah.
You know, you look back at some of the stuff and you're like,
oh man, I looked back at some of my old videos on LinkedIn the other day. Oh wow.
I'm sure they weren't that
I
bad.
announced this business. Yeah. Oh, they were bad, Aaron. They were bad. I announced this business launching with the "What's in my fridge" trend.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Can we put the snippets? Into
We'll
this video?
find it, George. Oh man, it was so bad. The music was bad. I'd added like little cartoon. It was
right.
But
was it very COVID related?
Yeah. It was like a trend that was happening
right?
on LinkedIn,
yeah.
but it was so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm cheesy at the best of times, but it was like cringe city. I watched it. I was like, oh my God,
what am I doing?
But like you say, it is a really good thing to look back because it makes you realise how much you've developed.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I hadn't looked at that video, I probably wouldn't have realised actually how far my videos have come. And like I do it all myself, apart from George has helped me with a few recently, George over there. But it is good to look back. And with what you do when you're a creative individual, again, no matter what the discipline is, it's always changing.
Yeah.
And you're quite a big reader. Like you're always sharing like books that are really good to like read for sort of your field. What else do you do other than reading? Are there things that you do to like keep your hand in? Like obviously you're always designing, but how do you hone your craft? Like
first off, I'm a skimmer, not a reader.
Oh, okay. He's a Blinkist. Blinkist is great though.
Yeah, Blinkist and like Headway and these kind of apps where, you know, you've got the summarized versions.
Yeah.
I think if you ask my wife, she'll probably be like, he doesn't read.
I've never seen him read a book ever.
He's never sat there and read a book cover to cover, which is probably true.
Yeah.
Because I do tail off. Like I'll lose interest. But I think my premise is always to pick it apart and pick the things that like, you know, the insights and the things that I want to learn.
You optimize the reading experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Aaron,
because I think you can summarize a lot of books really quite quickly. Okay, it's not going to be comprehensive, and it might not be a deep dive, but I think you can pick the sort of core concepts out really quickly. I just think I'm always trying to learn and I'm always trying to grow, because I think that the moment I'm not, and the moment I kind of feel like I stagnate.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to keep up with what the latest frameworks are in, you know, it could be design sprints, or it could be validation, or it could be conducting user interviews, or whatever it is. I feel like it's my purpose and, you know, part of my drive to learn to be better. And also anything that I read or skim or digest online informs my content as well.
Yeah.
So I often take things that I've read, and once I've understood it, then I'll create a piece of content around it.
Yeah. Very like the way I've always, obviously we don't know each other like super well, but the way I've always perceived you is just someone who's you're very intentional,
right,
about what you do.
To be.
Yeah, but I think is quite, now that as I've got older and I've worked with more people, the more designers I meet, like people who've done graphics, people who are doing product, people who are doing UI and UX work, like very intentional people, like just nothing is done accidentally. I'm not talking like in your personal life and stuff, you know, life is life, but professionally, like even then you said, you know, when I've digested something, I then like to use it to inform my content and help other people. Like it's just all very thought through. Like nothing is done on a whim. Nothing is done on oh, well, that's just what I think. Like it's all informed.
I think when you start off like life as a designer, you're just figuring things out. So sometimes you might explore what something looks like visually to make it like appealing, like aesthetically nice. But I think once you go through like the iteration and the multiple levels of the design, like if you could listen to my brain whilst I'm designing, you would probably hear like, you know, like tons of micro decisions and questions, and I'm constantly asking myself about what I'm designing.
Yeah.
Because like you say, because everything should have a purpose and everything needs to be thought of. And it might be as simple as like, okay, why am I using this component?
Yeah.
Or shouldn't I be using this component? And how do I style this component? Where do I put that component?
Yeah.
So these are like micro decisions that have to happen so quick.
Yeah.
Like if you could see, unfortunately, what you see when you see like designers' portfolios and the end outcome, that final piece of work, you don't see the iteration. If you saw, even with branding, the amount of like iterations that someone went through to get to that final outcome, you'd be amazed.
Yeah. Like from the scamping.
Yeah.
Like if people scamp and like draw it out.
From initial sketch of an idea, and you might end up actually something is completely different to how you originally imagined it. And I think that's the nature of design, I think, and being creative, is to take something, try to improve it, and just keep iterating to get to a point where you're like, this piece of design or this piece of like UI works now, and it works for these reasons because I've considered it.
Yeah.
Because I spent a week designing
breaking
one
it,
screen.
fixing it. Yeah.
Breaking things. And I think that goes back to like, taking apart a computer, putting it back together. Is just trying to understand that process. But I think I might take that away with me actually, and show. I think one of the things I'm not very good at is actually just showing off or showing like work in progress. It's a little bit difficult with what we do because most of the time we're required to sign NDAs.
Yeah, of course.
So a lot of the time we're under NDAs and we can't share the work. But there's so much. So much that we can, and I think it would be quite enlightening if you saw the level of work that went into just like to get to that final thing.
Because there's like this, and this might just be me, but designers, there's like, for me, there's like this facade of like perfect, it all just looks perfect, and that's because now I know that that's not the case because I'm far closer to it. But I always used to have this like, designers are always immaculate, they always look really cool, they always like, everything about them is very just on it.
Yeah.
But actually,
structured
when you of course.
Yeah.
But when you watch, like I say, when I watch Paul or my mum or Georgia go through the process of designing something from scratch to end result, there's some stuff in there where I'm like, whoa,
that's questionable.
What were you thinking there? And they're like, just had to get it out of my head. And Georgia and Paul design in a very similar way when they do brand, where it's just all on one big like Illustrator file and it's all just there, and I'm like, is that your brain? And Georgia's like,
that's basically
that's my brain.
Yeah.
And she'll iterate and then she'll whittle it down, and it's a brilliant process when you watch it. And then when you do get to the end result, you're like, you got to that, which is like bang on, but look at all the work you've done to get there. Whereas me, it's not as exciting when you're writing copy. Like it just looks like words on a page, and then it still looks like words on a page, and then it just looks like better words. So it's not really like,
it's a different type of evolution, though. I guess because it's not like visual. You can't see a story of like how this thing came to be from the moment it was first imagined to like this end thing. It's shiny. It's like it's executed well.
It's not quite as sexy, I'm afraid. If I did like posh typography, it might be, but it's just a bit excessive, so I'm not even going to go there. So at the moment then, if you were to say like in terms of places, where would you say you feel most creative?
Actual environments. I think for the longest time, probably during COVID, I probably felt the most comfortable and creative at home. But now I'm more in the office. I feel like that's like a natural place for me to be, because I think I prefer like the ambience and things going on and a bit of movement. I think sometimes if you're just left in a quiet room by yourself and it's just your thoughts, I think, it's sometimes a little bit off-putting. So I'd say the office, but I think some of my best work is sometimes out of hours, like when everyone's left and it's just me, or I'm working late at night, or I'm even on the sofa, me and the wife are watching something, but I'm still, working or playing with something. Yeah. That's sometimes where I, get the most.
Yeah. It's like that outcomes. Third wind. I call it. Almost. I get like in the evening, I have that like, I'm best like really early in the morning, and I'm like you, I'm most creative in the office. Yeah. because my home is my home. Like, and I'm not very good at it, but I'm getting better. Like, home is home, work is work. But I do get a real creative window, sort of like, I've even managed to nail the time down like 7 to 9. I just get like a lot of, it's like I've relaxed a bit and then my brain goes, oh, what about this? What about that? And it all, not every day, but it's definitely another window for me. Similar to you, I could be sat on the sofa looking at something else. I might be looking at booking a holiday. And then I'm like, oh no, I've got an idea, do that.
I think that it's just a real healthy habit, I think. Just turning your attention away to something else. It's almost like misdirection, and then actually I can come back to this one thing. And solve it differently. Maybe differently that I would have solved it if I was doing a 5-hour stint, you know, of just pure designing or writing or whatever it is. But yeah,
it's a breather.
Yeah, for sure.
And do you find outside of design, have you got any other creative outlets? Like we were talking about running, but running's not maybe the most creative. Is it? It's just like one foot in front of the other. But is there any other ways it comes out in you, would you say?
Well, at the beginning of this podcast, I think when I said I felt really privileged to always known what I wanted to do. I'm kind of a bit weird like that. I don't really have too many other hobbies because it's just like design is my business and business is my is design. It's design for me, and it is my passion. Like that's what I'm passionate about, and it's kind of like all of that I've known. Do I have any other hobbies? Yeah, of course. I like riding motorbikes. I do like to read. Yeah,
skim.
I
like to skim. Yeah. But you are like a self-professed? You own your nerdiness, don't you? Like you've got those posters in the office that are so cool. They're graphics, but they represent data, don't they? Or something like you've got one that's, what is it? The most peaks.
It's the highest peaks in the world. And it's just like a graphical representation of that. And it's abstract. Totally. I mean, everything. Yeah,
that's like super geeky, but really cool.
It's super
They're
geeky.
Really nice graphics as well. But then, and one was the temperatures of Rio, was it?
Rio de Janeiro. Yeah. And they were laid out in like a very like beautiful but abstract way. And I think I just like data and representing things. Yeah. Just the beauty in that. But I think that just permeates across everything.
You're just a designer life. Through and through.
Yeah, although maybe not my clothes. I think I dress quite plain and boring.
But some designers are very like it's like less is more sometimes as well. So like, a lot of designers that I know will stick to like black t-shirt, jeans, same trainers, like simple classic watch. Like it doesn't mean you have to be like high fashion or high. There is definitely maybe it's just me because I've hung around with a lot of them now, but there is a just certain way about.
I'm sitting on my ass for like 8 hours in front of a computer. Like I need to be comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't be wearing like, gold Versace trainers. It's not going to work.
I mean, you'd rock them, to be fair, Aaron. Try it.
I don't think I would.
Let's not talk about trainers anyway, based on the trainers I've been judged for buying recently. Do you believe anyone can be creative, or that we've all got creativity in us?
I think so, 100%. I think even if you don't realize it, you could be creative in a number of ways. You might even be creative in the way that you stack the dishwasher. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because
my dad
I think
definitely
everything's got a process and a method to it.
Yeah.
And I know when people think of creativity, they kind of think of a bit of chaos and like putting things together and trying things out and being, very experimental. But I think people can be creative just in everyday life, like how they fold a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I think it's just innate in most of us to be creative. We are problem solvers by nature.
Yeah. Even salespeople, I always say like sales is creative.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I said, my accountant earlier, and just I'm with you. I think there is something in all of us. And Cardi, who was on the pod, she said we've all got a creativity in us. It's just we're not always exercising it.
Yeah, you're not.
And
I was
like,
aware.
nailed it. Yeah, you're not even, and we're not always aware of it. Like I wouldn't have said I was creative, but the more time I spend with other people, I'm like, oh, I am.
Yeah,
it's just in my own way. Just because it's not how I would like it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't
always
mean
have
it's
to
not there.
manifest itself into something visual on a screen.
Yeah.
I think if you're a salesperson and you're taking a call, you've got to be really quite creative about your response.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
someone has an objection about something, like, no, I don't want to buy your, 5,000 lead list or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And you need to be quite creative about how you convince them otherwise,
Yeah.
right? And the words that you use.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I think it's just whether you realize it or not, you're probably being quite creative.
Yeah. Comes out in different ways. Right. You ready for the quick fire?
Let's go.
Now, I say this quick fire. I don't think anybody's answered them quickly yet. So the challenge to you, Aaron, is can you keep this quick fire?
Probably not.
So if you could invite, this is the least quick, I would say. If you could invite 3 creatives, past or present, to dinner, who would you invite?
That's a really good question.
And we're talking like any form of creativity. It doesn't have to be designers or...
Yeah, okay. So I think the first person I would probably want to invite to dinner, a guy called Don Norman, who is like considered the grandfather of like user experience.
Okay.
I would want him at my table because there's so many questions that I'd probably want to ask him. I think, I know this probably feels like a bit of a cop out, but I would kind of like, I'd want someone like Elon Musk there. I think someone who is kind of like a bit of a visionary, and understands tech and innovation. So for me, that
bit of a wild thinker. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because I could just imagine like the conversations and where they would go and how much that I would absorb and learn.
Yeah.
And the third, I would invite, this is a curveball, someone like Bob Ross, the painter.
No, I don't. Bob Ross.
Yeah. No?
No. Should we? We're going to look him up. I don't know Bob. Should I know Bob? Should I?
I
Bob
mean,
Ross. Right. I'm writing it down.
I've
Big
just
capital.
got a little bit of tectonic white here. I'm just going to...
No, I don't know
add a
Bob
bit there.
Ross. Where have I been living?
It's from like his late 70s, early 80s, I think.
I mean,
Like
George was
TV
just looking at me like I've
personality.
been living under a rock.
What?
So
Yeah, what?
sorry.
I think
Bob
I would invite
Ross.
someone like that to dinner.
Like it?
Because I just think that he would have a lot of like interesting insight.
Yeah.
And I'd like pick his brains on like, how he painted trees, for instance, or the sea. Because when you see him work, he uses just like really simple brush strokes or like palette knives, or you know. And at the end of it, he's created this like incredible painting, and you're like,
how?
And the way that he does it as well, because it's televised, he makes you think that you can do it too, which most
and then you
people
try.
can't. And you just like got a white canvas, and you're like, okay, Bob Ross, where do I start?
It's just a swoosh here and
Yeah.
a swoosh there.
But these are the kind of like terms that he uses.
Yeah. I'll look him up. Bob Ross. Sorry if I've offended anyone by not knowing who he is. Okay. This is my favourite. If your work was edible, what would it taste like?
Oh, it'd be like popping candy, I think.
Yeah, that's so good. That is so good for your work. Yeah. Oh, surprise. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's a really good one. And last one, if you could choose like a theme song for your life so far, what would it be? This is a really difficult one. Really catch people with this one.
Wow. I'm laughing because I've got friends who would probably know like the soundtrack to my life, but it's really embarrassing. I don't think I should say it.
Can't be more embarrassing than Stuart's, Aaron. So,
it'd be something like Blur or Oasis, let's face it.
Yeah. Or Liberty X. Sorry, Stuart.
I think my sister once dated one of the
Really?
members of
Claim to fame.
Bizarre. What would be my soundtrack?
What's like the first songs that are coming to mind?
Yeah, no, I think it's like Foo Fighters' "Learn to Fly" or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Beautiful and acoustic. The acoustic version is just really nice. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think because they're kind of like my staple.
Yeah.
That.
And they're like that blend, aren't they? Of like, they're really like inspiring and they get you going, but they're like really well made and written, and they're like inspiring, but
also stupid, like back
hearty.
in the day, like
Yeah,
Blink-182 videos were just like the most stupid thing ever.
Yeah.
Right. And they just had fun with it.
Yeah.
So I think I'd probably choose that because I don't think there's anything else that come to mind that I think my wife would just say like Incubus, like anything from Incubus at all. Yeah.
Nice. Well, you have actually answered those probably the quickest out of everyone.
All right.
Mum was definitely the slowest. I was like, quick fire, Helen. Quick. Quick. Being the operative word.
It's so difficult, though, just to like, if I could, I would just go like rapid fire and give you one word.
Yeah,
but
no.
I can't do that.
It's too
My brain
difficult.
doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
It's too difficult to do. Well, thank you, Aaron, for coming
welcome.
along.
Thanks for having me.
It's been nice to catch up because I haven't seen you for ages.
I know. It's been
and yeah, it's nice to see your business. Like we've all sort of gone through our own process of starting things, so it's nice to still be part of a little collective. But yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.